Ronda Rousey had a really promising start in WWE, and it looked like she was a natural superstar. Her debut at the Royal Rumble in 2018 was very exciting. She was one of the hottest female athletes on the planet at the time, and it was a huge deal to see her in a wrestling ring. Then she teamed up with Kurt Angle to face Triple H and Stephanie McMahon in one of the best matches of the night at WrestleMania 34, and once again, the fans were totally behind her. She was accepted as a true WWE superstar from the moment that she arrived on the scene, and it was no secret that Rousey had been a fan of wrestling since she was a kid. We'd seen her sat in the front row at various shows in the past, and she'd appeared alongside The Rock at WrestleMania 31 a few years before, and of course, she adopted Roddy Piper's nickname. Yes, Rowdy Ronda Rousey seemed to have a lot of love for the business, and you could see the happiness on her face during these first appearances. She was so respectful of the business too, and that came across in the many interviews that she gave at the time. When she made her full-time debut in May 2018, she was booked in a way that made sense. She was kept strong without that negatively impacting the other women on the roster. She got a Raw Women's title match against Nia Jax at Money in the Bank, which she lost thanks to Alexa Bliss cashing in her briefcase. But her popularity was undeniable. It already felt like the right time for her to ascend to the championship, just because of how over she was with the fans. She went on to squash Alexa Bliss at SummerSlam to win the Raw Women's Championship. It felt like she was a WWE superstar and a worthy women's champion, rather than a guest MMA fighter who was being booked over the other women on the roster. Her title reign was pretty damn good, and there were a good few months where she was on top of the world. But it couldn't last forever, and she soon became victim to WWE's dumbass storytelling at the end of 2018. When Becky Lynch returned to the company, she was quickly turned heel, and this was completely against the fans' wishes, but it was during that period where Vince McMahon was going directly against what the fans wanted. And so they entered Rousey into a program with Lynch in what was supposed to be a sort of Clash of the Titans style feud, but the roles were totally wrong. All the fans wanted to do was cheer Lynch, and so by default they started booing Rousey. And here is where it became very clear how fragile Rousey's ego could be. For the very first time, she was experiencing a negative reaction from the crowd, and she didn't like it one bit. It seemed as though it would be Rousey versus Lynch at WrestleMania 35, and Rousey took to social media in a very hot-headed way. The online war between Rousey and Lynch was a very confusing one to witness, from a fan's perspective at least. As part of the storyline, Lynch was arrested on Raw, and she posted her mugshots on Twitter shortly thereafter. It was obviously a work, it was part of the storyline, but Rousey decided not to play along. That's what I'm trying to do, dumbass. You hobbling around trying to be a ginger crutch ninja and taking fake prison photos in the hallway isn't helping. Lynch tried to discourage her from calling things fake, but Ronda just got more fired up. F word, you mean fake? Fake like your nonsensical BS armbar that doesn't even work and just looks like you're holding the dick you wish you had. It became evident here that Rousey was every inch the WWE superstar until she was under scrutiny. Rebecca Quinn, I don't care what the script says, I'm beating the living shit out of you the next time I see you. I don't know whether this was Rousey genuinely going off script, or whether WWE were approving her words in order to build up the match at WrestleMania, but from a fan's perspective, seeing this kind of fourth wall breaking is very off-putting indeed. The way Rousey conducted herself on social media showed up the business and disrespected both her peers and the fans. It was a bad presentation for a so-called superstar. The WrestleMania match ended up being between Rousey, Lynch and Charlotte Flair, with Lynch winning in the end. That was the end of Rousey's first run in the company, but it turned out that she was far from happy. In an interview, she said, "So it's just like, what am I doing it for if I'm not able to spend my time and energy on my family, but instead spending my time and energy on a bunch of fucking ungrateful fans that don't even appreciate me? I love performing, I love the girls, I love being out there, but at the end of the day, I was just like, fuck these fans, dude." Dealing with fans that love you one moment and hate you the next is all part of being a pro wrestler. It kind of comes with the territory. While she was away from WWE, Rousey took every opportunity to blast the fans, both on Twitter and in interviews. It's hard not to take it personally from the fans because I don't go out there as, I do go out there as a character, but I am actually Ronda Rousey, so I don't play Ronda Rousey on television. So sometimes I take it personally from the fans, not so much from the wrestlers. The fans I do. It's such pressure when I'm the last one on the show because I feel like it's my responsibility to retain the ratings and deliver. You know, you don't want people to be disappointed. Well, most people don't have a thick enough skin to be a WWE superstar. And it was this kind of talk that proved that Ronda was out of her depth in the wrestling business. A return for Rousey looked like it was a long way off in 2021, and that seemed like it was for the best, for her own mental health, if nothing else. But then, for some reason, she showed back up at the 2022 Royal Rumble. This time around, it didn't feel as special as back in 2018, and once again, she was being booked against type as a babyface. It was a baffling decision to bring her back as a good guy because she would have worked perfectly as a heel, especially after everything she'd said about the fans. The obvious idea would have been for her to wrestle Becky Lynch at WrestleMania, this time with Lynch as the face and Ronda as the heel, but McMahon was still in his stubborn asshole mode and decided to book a match for her against Charlotte instead. Flair won at WrestleMania and then Rousey went on to win the championship from her at Backlash. In this second run, WWE encountered its biggest problem with booking someone like Ronda Rousey. She made everyone around her look weak simply because of her real-life credentials. She lost the title when Liv Morgan cashed in her Money in the Bank briefcase, and then she had a totally unbelievable feud with her. It was obvious that in reality, Rousey could kick the living shit out of Liv Morgan in a real fight, and yet she ended up in a 2-month-long program with her where they traded the belt back and forth. It was really difficult to suspend your disbelief and believe that anyone on the roster was equal to Rousey, apart from possibly Charlotte Flair or Becky Lynch. And while that was totally out of Rousey's control, it's another reason why she made for a bad WWE superstar. And WWE had no idea what to do with her going forward. They ended up pairing her with Shayna Baszler, and the duo bullied their way through the women's division on SmackDown. And from the look on Rousey's face at the time, she didn't really want to be there. Her last match in the company was at SummerSlam 2023, where Baszler beat her in an MMA rules match. She announced her retirement soon after. Recently, she's revealed how unhappy she was during her second run with WWE. In her autobiography, she wrote, "I called Triple H and told him I was done being a babyface. I was no longer capable of playing the good guy. I was done smiling and shaking hands with being shit on. I wanted to be able to defend myself, to say what was on my mind. It was my turn to turn. But as hard as I pushed, WWE pushed back. It just wasn't yet time, I was told. We had to build up to it further," the producers said. "We needed to better develop the characters." They talked about it as if they were writing scripts for serious actors who wanted to know what is my motivation for this scene, and not people who were smashing each other through tables. I went out every week, night after night, and I sold falls, hits and cheap shots like a champ for WWE. But the fans hated it. The novelty of my arrival had worn off for everyone, including me. The story that WWE prides itself so much on telling was going nowhere. As months passed, I started to feel like WWE had sold me a bunch of bullshit. She pours a lot more scorn on the company in her book, and she really doesn't hold back. And it's a shame, because that debut back in 2018 and her first few months with the company were absolutely fantastic. But in the end, she wasn't cut out to be a WWE superstar in any way, shape or form. There was a total mismatch between her personality and the corporate WWE machine. Do you agree with my opinions in this video? Let me know down in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. It's much appreciated.